Hi everyone, and welcome to the Knit California channel. My name is Leslie. I'm a knitter and pattern designer here in Southern California, and in today's episode we are going to be talking about if I wore my knits in 2024. I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic in today's video, so grab your knitting, grab something cozy to drink, and let's get into it. This is my second year making a Did I Wear My Knits video, and I'm really excited to be back with you making this video again. If you did not see the first video, Did I Wear My Knits in 2023, I'm going to link it here. The first year that I did this, I think I had some really good takeaways, some really good observations. This year though, I feel like my observations are very different from last year. So if you did not watch last year's video, I do think it would be good to go back and maybe take a look at it just to see, like, I don't know, what kind of things I was noticing about wearing my knits, not wearing my knits, some of the reasons for, you know, the trends I was noticing, because what I'm noticing this year is very different to what I was noticing last year. But anyways, if you're new here, let me talk about kind of how this all came about, how I gather the data to make this video, and then we're gonna get into like what my goal was. I'm going to talk to you about what my most worn knits were for this year, my trends and my takeaways from all of this tracking and analysis, and then what's next for 2025. So this actually came about at the end of 2022. I was realizing that I was knitting all of these sweaters, I was knitting all of these garments, and I felt like I wasn't wearing them very often. And so my goal going into 2023 was I wanted to wear my knits more. And I didn't have any sort of way to like quantify this at the time. It was really just like wear my knits more. And so what I started to do, I had this is my 2023 knitting journal, is I started tracking every single month. Let me show you what this originally looked like. You know, was I wearing my knits every single month? So kind of what this started looking like was, here's all the knits that I had across the top and the days of the month, and I would mark down what knits I wore on every single day. This has morphed, as you can imagine, and what it looks like now is I just write down for every single day what knit or what knits I wore on that day, and then I will tally them up at the end of the month. And then I actually input all of these tallies into a spreadsheet on my computer, so that I can make some charts, make some graphs, and analyze it all that way. And so the first step back last year in 2023 was just to start tracking the wearing of my knits. And so I did that for a full year. Last year I was able to do some analysis, see where I was. I got my baseline kind of like wear percentage for number of days out of the year that I was wearing my knits. I also was able to track, like, I guess the instances is what I'm calling it, like how many times I was wearing knits. Like, some days you wear more than one item, right? So yes, I was counting the number of days that I was wearing a knit piece, a knit garment, but there were days that I would wear more than one, so I wanted to count that also. And I did better at counting that this year. But so I had all of that data. And so then coming into 2024, I've got Rocky here, by the way. So you'll see his little head pop up. Going into 2024, I had that baseline number, and let me tell you. Okay, for 2023, I had wore my knits 52% of the days of the year. It was 191 days out of 365 days. So coming into 2024, my goal was I wanted to be higher than that. And that was it. I just wanted to wear my knits more than 52% of the days of the year. Come back. And so again, in 2024, I tracked every single day. Anytime I wore a knit, whether it was a sweater, whether it was a pair of socks, you know, the sweaters I tracked individually. So for example, today I'm wearing my Ingrid sweater. I would write down I wore my Ingrid sweater. If I wore a hat, I would say I wore my Oslo hat, the hot pink one or the purple one. For socks, I have a lot of pairs of socks. I did not track those separately. So I did group all of my socks into one lump. I just had a category that was socks. To me, my knit socks are interchangeable. I did not feel like, you know, I prefer wearing one pair of socks over another pair of socks. So I didn't feel like there was any need to separate them out and track individually each different pair of socks. Maybe that's something that you would want to do, but for me, that's how I decided to do it. And so now I have all of the data to see this year in 2024 if I wore my knits more than I did in 2023, and just in general, like what my trend is for wearing my knits. The other piece of this, and I talked about this a lot, I think in last year's video, is just where I live. So I live in Southern California. I actually live in between Los Angeles and San Diego. If you live in Southern California, you know that there are a lot of different microclimates here in Southern California. So the weather really does impact what you're going to wear during the day. And so that's really going to impact what you decide, if you decide to wear a knit or not wear a knit. And the types of knits, the specific knits that you have in your wardrobe, are also going to impact whether or not you're going to wear them on that day as well. So there's a lot of different factors here, right? Since I think made that video last year, since I've been sharing on Instagram and here on YouTube, just the tracking in general of my knits, I have seen so many other people start to do this in their own life and, you know, in their own journals, and it's been really, really amazing to see. And I've seen a lot of other people share that they wear their knits almost every single day, and it's so amazing. I'm not at that place yet, and I think that's a whole different conversation, and it's gonna be that's a different goal for different people. Like, do you want to be at a point where you are wearing your knits every single day? I don't know if that is a place where I want to be. Like, there are other things that I have in my wardrobe that I also like to wear, right? So there's a balance there. It's like, yes, I want to wear my knits more than I was, but do I want to be at 100% of the days of the year? I don't know. I don't necessarily think that that's my ultimate goal. So I haven't really put like a full limit yet, I haven't fully figured out where that sweet spot is. When we talk about where I ended up this year, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think for right now, those are some of the key things that I want you to keep in mind before we go more into this discussion, okay? So, let's talk more about my goal and whether or not I met this goal, okay? So, I kind of already touched on this a little bit, and I am going to be reading from my journal. This was my 2024 journal. So, my goal for wearing my knits this year in 2024 was to be above that 52% number of days per year, and this was in comparison to last year when I wore my knits 191 days per year. So, did I meet this goal? Did I not meet this goal? I am happy to say, I'm not going to bury the lead, I did meet this goal this year. I wore my knits 249 days out of 366 days. It was a leap year in 2024. And so if we do that math, 249 divided by 366 is about 68% of the days of the year. That is a little bit over 2/3 of the days of the year, right? 66% is about 2/3. So I'm at 68%. When I really sat to think about this, I feel really good about this number, this, 2/3 of the days of the year. It feels really appropriate for where I live, for my climate, for my lifestyle, and for my current knitted wardrobe. I do think there are a lot of gaps in my current knitted wardrobe that could potentially fill in, some of those days to maybe get a little bit higher of a percentage, higher of a number of days that I'm wearing my knits. But again, how much higher do I want that percentage to be? Do I want to fully replace everything that I have in my wardrobe right now with my knits? I don't know. Okay? We touched on that, so I don't know if I need to go, how much farther I need to go with that right now. But let me show you. I'm going to put up the charts that I made so that we can take a look at these, because this is the fun part to me. So throughout the year, I don't do it every month because sometimes I just forget, but a few times throughout the year I will go in and I will update my spreadsheet on my computer, and just type in, okay, here are all the knits that I wore this month, and it'll update this graph that I have. And one of the graphs that I have shows every single knit that I have and then the number of times that I wear it. So it's a bar graph. And now at the end of the year, it's really easy to see by looking at this bar graph which knits I have worn the most over the year, because they have the highest bars, so they just really stand out. So I'm going to show you this graph first. So here it is. And you can see, it might be a little bit small to read some of the names, okay? But you can see right away the very leftmost bar is the highest bar. I will tell you right now that those are my socks, all of my knit socks. And then you can see a few more bars that really peek out over all the rest. And we'll go into those. I'm going to do a little countdown for you and tell you what all of these are. But those are, my knits that I wore the most throughout the year. Okay, then there were two other charts that I put together. So I'm going to show you these now. This top one is the total days per month that knits were worn. So for each month, I counted the number of days that I wore knits. And you can see in, the winter months and in the fall months, I definitely have higher number of days that I wore knits. In the summer, the number of days is a little bit lower. It's actually not as low in the summer as I thought it would be. And maybe I'll show you this chart compared to 2023. Yeah, let me put up the 2023 chart. So the top is going to be 2024. The bottom is going to be 2023. When you look at 2023, you see a big dip in the summer, right? And this was, if you didn't watch the 2023 video, I think this was one of my big takeaways, was that, late spring into the summer, the number of times that I wore my knits just like drops very low. I wasn't wearing my summer knits very often. And this year, in 2024, I knit a few more summer garments, and so the number of days that I wore knits actually increased. I feel like, there's a little bit of a dip. You can definitely see the numbers are lower, right? For the winter months, the fall months, I'm wearing knits, in the 20s, 23, 22, 25 days out of the year. And June, July, August, September, I'm wearing knits between 11 and 17 days out of the year. So it's definitely a lower number, but this is higher than what I was doing in 2023, when in June, July, and August, I was wearing knits 5 to 9 days out of the year. So I did a really good job, I think, adding to my spring and summer wardrobe this year in 2024, and then wearing those knits. So that's a positive, I think. And that really added to my overall, wear percentage this year, because that's a huge part of this year, those 4 months. Okay, I'm going to take away the 2023 chart, and I'm going to add in on the bottom now. The last chart that I made is the total wears, and this is instances per month. So like I was saying before, when I wear more than one knit per day, I counted all of those instances that I wore knits, and I added those to a chart. So the general shape of this graph compared to this top graph, just the number of days per month, is the same. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And if you look, you have to look specifically at the numbers in the bars to see any sort of differences here. And the only kind of interesting thing I can take away from this is that in February, March, April, May, and then October and November are the months when I have more instances than days that knits were worn. And so that means that in January, June, July, August, September, and December, those months, every time I wore a knit, I only wore one knit per day, which I find January and December to be really interesting. Most of the time when I wore for 2 knits on the same day, it would be a sweater and socks, almost exclusively. There were a couple times in October, I would say, like when I was in Ireland, I would maybe wear a sweater, socks, a hat, maybe a shawl, or like a cowl. So there were a couple different variations going on, and that was over the course of maybe like 2 weeks. So, and it wasn't every day. And I actually didn't see like a huge spike in October in the number of instances. Like that wasn't even the biggest month for number of instances. March is actually my highest number of instances month. So that's interesting. The only kind of like to be expected time is in the summer. So like June, July, August, September, all of the instances match the number of days, and that's because whenever I wore a knit, it was just my top. I wouldn't be wearing more than one. I wouldn't be wearing socks or anything like that at the same time. So, okay, I think we're done looking at these graphs. I think those are the only interesting things I have to say about them. Let's go back now, and I will tell you, and I will show you photos of my most worn knits that I wore in 2024. I need some water first. Did I tell you I got a haircut? Cute. Do you like it? I really like it. Okay, I'm gonna start with my summer knits because I separated them out between summer knits and then all the other knits, because my summer knits in general had less wears than my other ones, but they still had the way that sorry, let me back up. I took note of most worn knits if they had 10 or more wears. That to me was a lot. All of my top summer knits, these top 3 summer knits, had 10 or more wears. Anyways, I just separated out the summer knits versus the other ones. It made sense in my brain, okay? I don't need to explain it any other reason than it made sense in my brain to separate them out because of like the time period really that I wore them. Yeah, so when I tell you about all these knits, I'm gonna show you the picture. I'm gonna tell you the number of times that I wore it, and I'm gonna tell you the months that I wore them in, because this is also really interesting, and it'll only become more interesting when we get down to some of the top couple knits that I wore, okay? So, starting with my summer knits, I had 6 total summer knits in rotation this year, and 3 of them I wore more than 10 times. So, number 3 was my Poppy Tea by Petite Knit. I wore this a total of 10 times between the months of July and September. And I had actually finished this, I believe, in July, so it could only start to be worn in July. So July, August, September, I wore it 10 times. Number 2 is my Palm Springs tank, which is a design that's going to be coming out by me in spring of this year. I was going to tell you a month, but not yet. Spring of this year, this tank top is going to be released, and I wore this 12 times between June and September. And then number 1 on my most worn summer knit list was the Farnham Tee by the Knit Pearl Girl, and I wore this 13 times between May and September. So you can see the Farnham Tee had the most time to be worn. I had finished this in May, so it was worn the most number of times. It had the most number of times to be worn. Then the Palm Springs tank finished it in June, had second most time to be worn, and then Poppy Tea in July. I will say though, with some of the other summer knits that I had in rotation this year, some of them I had finished last year and they did not get worn as many times. For example, both my ranunculuses, my green ranunculus and my pink ranunculus, those are the only two. The other summer knit that I had was my Riley tee, and I think that ended up with like 8 or 9 wears, so it was really close. Just didn't quite make the number 10, and I finished that this year. So, and we will talk more about that issue with the ranunculuses. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, okay? Okay, on to all of my other knits. So this is mostly sweaters, okay? I have 7 that I wore 10 times or more, okay? So number 7 is my Alchemy pullover by me. This is going to be released in February, so very, very soon. I wore this 10 times between October and December. Number 6 is my Cal cardigan, the pink version. I wore this 18 times between March and June, and then 1 time in December. Okay, between March and June, 17 times, and then only 1 time in December. Okay, think about that. Number 5 is my clove sweater. I wore this 19 times between January and April, and then also between October and December. Number 4 is my stripe hype sweater by Kutova Kika. I wore this 20 times. I finished this in May, and then all 20 times were worn between September and December. I love this sweater. Number 3 is my Farnham sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. I wore this 28 times between April and May and September and December. Number 2 is my green Cal cardigan that I wore 33 times between January and June, and it has not been worn since. And lastly, my number 1 most worn knit is actually not a sweater at all. It's all of my socks that I wore 69 times between January and June, and then October and December. So over the summer, didn't wear any of my socks. I think that's normal. It was way too freaking hot to wear wool socks. And something also to note is that I didn't even track wearing any of my socks in 2023 because I didn't wear them at all. This year I just decided I'm gonna start wearing my knit socks with my slippers a lot, and I wore them 69 times. So definitely something that's going to continue. I want more knit socks. A lot of the knit socks that I have were actually cranked on a sock knitting machine. We do not need to get into the argument about whether these are hand knit versus handmade. My best friend Rachel is knitting, cranked these for me with yarn from my stash. So they are knit socks. I call them knit socks. Whatever. They're in my wardrobe. I count them as part of this tracking. I love them. I wear them. It's my decision, so. Okay. That's all of my most worn garments. Let's move on and let's talk about the trends that I had noticed and all of my takeaways. I have 5 big trends and takeaways. The first one, actually, we kind of just talked about is I love wearing my knit socks with my slippers, and I want more knit socks. I started knitting my own socks last year in like September, October. I knit one full pair. I've got another pair on the needles. The second sock ended up is the leg of the second sock is longer than the first sock, and I was not in a good enough headspace in December to like fix it. So I need to go back and fix it, but I have really been enjoying knitting my own socks and like figuring it out and like getting into it. And it's something that I had tried to do multiple times over the last couple of years, and I just like really couldn't get into it. So I'm really happy that I'm finally getting into it and enjoying wearing socks. So it finally feels like these two interests are coming together in a very nice way. So I'm hoping this year to knit a few more pairs and add them to my wardrobe. So that's very nice. Okay, number 2, just a trend in general about the sweaters that I like to wear. Maybe I'll keep the photos up here. Hopefully they're still there. I am gravitating away from wearing variegated yarn, and I am really loving wearing more solid color yarns and wearing stripes. I think I've talked to a few people about this, and I think this is something that just like maybe knitters in general go through. Like, you start knitting, you fall in love with hand-dyed yarn, you fall in love with variegated hand-dyed yarn, you want to knit all of these sweaters in variegated hand-dyed yarn, and then you realize maybe I don't really like wearing all of these sweaters. Maybe they have some color pooling in them and it's not really my style. For me, I did a color analysis last year. I actually have an affiliate link with a color analysis group company in the description box if you're interested in doing one yourself. And doing that really like opened my eyes to, you know, what colors look good on me, what colors I want to gravitate more towards in my knits and in my knitwear. There were a couple sweaters in my wardrobe that I have already knit that I had felt like maybe they weren't the best colors for me, and kind of doing that color analysis confirms that for me. And it doesn't mean I'm never going to wear them again, but like when I go through a full year and I don't pick them up to wear them, you know, those feelings are confirmed about like maybe why I'm not gravitating towards them is because I'm gravitating towards something else, because I know that I like the colors that I like and the colors that look good on me, right? So there's definitely some things going on there. I'm figuring out more what colors I like, what color stories I like, what color palettes I like, what kind of yarns I like better, and it's definitely impacting what I'm wearing. So that's number 2. Number 3, my alchemy pullover, my clove sweater, and my stripe hype sweater are all knit in DK Superwash Merino yarn, and that's 3 out of the 6 sweaters that are on my top list. Actually, okay, so out of my top 7, right, the 1 is socks, we can take that out. 2 cal cardigans that I really haven't worn since the beginning of 2024, so let's take those out. What I'm left with is the alchemy pullover, the clove, the stripe hype, and my Farnham sweater. The Farnham sweater is an alpaca sport weight yarn. I do really like that yarn. And the other 3 are all superwash merino DK. So what this is telling me is that I really like wearing those fibers. I already know that I like knitting with DK superwash merino. Like, that is my preferred yarn choice to knit with. And seeing those 3 sweaters in my top worn knits is confirmation that I also like to wear those sweaters. So logically, it's telling me maybe I should knit more sweaters in DK superwash merino yarn because they'll get worn, right? And I could probably also knit more in alpaca sport because I really like to wear that as well. So food for thought, food for thought. Okay, number 4. This was the takeaway from last year's video also. I still want to knit more cardigans, especially because I'm not wearing either of my 2 Cal cardigans anymore. Oh, okay, and then why, I guess probably the question you're thinking, why am I not wearing the 2 Cal cardigans that I have anymore? I think the biggest reason is because they're in variegated yarn. I think I'm just over the variegated yarn. I look at them sometimes in my closet and I'm just like, yeah, I just have like no interest and no desire in wearing them. And I wore them so much last year. The Cal cardigan in 2023 was my number 2 most worn knit. I wore that 25 times in 2023 and I had finished it in August. So between August and June, August 2023 and June 2024, I wore that green Cal cardigan 58 times and then I just stopped wearing it. So it got a lot of wear. Like, you can't say that it wasn't worth knitting it because 58 times is a lot. But, you know, I haven't really worn it since. It doesn't mean I won't wear it again. Like, who knows if my preferences will change and I will want to wear it again. But right now, that's not where my preference is. So, and I do think it's the yarn. Okay, but anyways, I still want to knit more cardigans. Like, I don't have like any knitted cardigans that are in rotation in my hand knitted wardrobe. So I've got one on my needles. I've got my book club cardigan on the needles. It's just going really slow and I need more. Will I knit more this year? Who knows? I don't know. I really want to focus on designing and I'm kind of scared to design cardigans. I'm not quite there yet, so we'll see. Okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of trends and takeaways, I've touched on this a few times, but I want to go a little bit deeper in it, is just like the seasonality of wearing my knits. I tend to favor newer seasons with my knits. I didn't even look at any of my knits from 2021 or 2022. I literally didn't wear them at all. I took them out of my chart because they were 0 and they were taking up too much space. There are 16 knits from those years that I didn't wear at all. And I'm gonna put up the like raw data that I use to make the bar chart showing all of the knits that I wore, because you can really see the seasonality in my knits in this data, and I'll just kind of explain it to you. On the left hand side, I have all of my knits listed in the order that they were finished. So all of the knits at the top are the oldest knits that I have, and all of the knits at the bottom are the newest knits that I have. And you can see the gray bars at the bottom are like those knits did not exist in those months. So I grayed out the boxes so that it doesn't look like I didn't wear the knits in those months. Like the knits literally didn't exist in those months. But if you look at where, I'm gonna see if I can explain this well enough. It makes sense in my head, but sometimes I'm just not as good at explaining things and getting the point across. You can kind of, okay, if I like put a trend line in showing where the data sits. So at the beginning of the year, right, in like the winter time, the springtime, I'm wearing more of the knits. I'm wearing the knits that I had at the time, right? The knits at the bottom of this chart didn't exist yet, right? So I'm wearing all the knits that I had. Then in the summer, I'm wearing all my summer knits, right? I'm not really wearing my sweaters and stuff. It's too warm. Then in the fall, I'm wearing all of my newer knits that I just finished. So most of the data, you can see all of the knits that I'm wearing is down in this bottom right-hand corner. Where you don't see very much data is in the top right-hand corner, meaning I'm not wearing many of the knits that I already had knit from last year at the end of this year. So that's what I mean when I say I tend to favor newer seasons with my knits. Kind of the way that I was thinking about this, or like what this reminds me of, is like in fashion houses, like when they have like the spring summer collection and the fall winter collection. It's a new collection every year, and like, you know, it's taboo to wear last year's collection. You can only wear this year's collection. That's like what I'm doing with my knitwear. Like I'm not wearing knits that I have knit from previous years. Now, 2021 and 2022, I was a newer knitter, right? So the yarn that I'm using is that variegated yarn that I'm talking about. The sweaters that I'm knitting maybe don't fit as well, don't have, the right fit. I have been refining the patterns that I'm choosing, the amount of ease that I'm knitting in. My body has changed in the last couple of years, so the size of garments that I'm making has changed. There are a lot of other factors going into this, but like the same thing is true for my summer knits. Like there are a lot of summer knits from last year that I just like didn't wear at all this year. For example, the ranunculuses that I talked about, like those still fit. Those are in solid color yarns, and I wore them only a couple times this year, and I was obsessed with them last year. Like, why didn't I wear them? Because I just had newer things to wear this year. Well, that's really it. So I don't know, it's just something to think about. Like, what I wrote down in here is like, does this mean that I'm not doing a good job at choosing patterns to knit, yarn choice, classics versus trends? Like, will this continue to be a trend? I don't know. Do other people feel the same way? Do you see the same things in your own habits? Like, I don't know. I don't want to like only be knitting very classic, basic pieces because that's kind of boring. But at the same time, like, those are the things that definitely get worn. So, I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer. I definitely don't have an answer right now, but it's definitely something that I'm going to keep an eye on going forward. And I'll see if it continues. I do think I'm doing a lot better, like, you know, in 2024 and hopefully going forward in, like, choosing patterns and choosing yarns that I know I like and will continue to like going forward. So hopefully the stuff that I have made in 2024 will have that longevity in my wear and in my collection. But only time will tell. So, alright, those are my trends and takeaways. What's next going into 2025? I am definitely going to continue my tracking in 2025. I have my new 2025 Yarn Enthusiast Journal. This is my creation. This is available on my website at knitcalifornia.com. The link is in the description box down below. This one that I have is the dated version, so each of the months has the dates on them. There is also a version that is undated, so each of these just has like a blank line and you can fill in whatever month you are using. You can fill in whatever month you're in right now. The dated version also has some like yearly pages up front. Goal setting, yarn purchases and plans, project list, all that sorts of stuff. And oh yeah, here is the knitwear tracker that I will be using this year. So you can see I've already started. Today's the 19th, so I got to add in my Ingrid sweater that I'm wearing today. And I'm basically going to be doing the same thing, so I'll be writing in every day in my journal what I'm wearing, and then I will tally it all up at the end of the month in here and add it to my spreadsheet on my computer so that I can make these charts again at the end of the year. My goal for this year in 2025 is to get around the same percentage that I had in 2024. I think this, 66, 68% wear for number of days, about 2/3 the number of days of the year, is a really great percentage, like I said. It feels appropriate for where I live, for my climate, for my lifestyle, and for my current wardrobe. So that's what I'm aiming for again. If I add more really nice pieces this year to my knitted wardrobe, like I feel like I really elevate it and I get a higher wear percentage, maybe next year I'll increase this number to like 75% or something, I don't know. But right now I'm going to keep it at around 2/3, okay? And I also want to continue to notice the trends around wearing my 2024 spring, summer, fall, winter knitwear trends that we just talked about next year. So that's it. The last thing I will say.
Okay.
Take it slowly? Yeah. 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 I just got a Taco Bell nacho fries delivery. Good thing I'm almost done here. So, I think that's it. This was really fun. I know today's January 19th when I'm filming this video, so I wanted to film it earlier in the month, but I've had a sore throat. I don't know if you can tell. Rocky! I've had a sore throat. I don't know if you can tell. Hopefully I've done a good job at cutting out all of my coughing and stuff. But thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about, any of my tracking or analysis, like please leave them in the comments down below. If you want to do this yourself and like need help with any of it, I'm here to help you. You can always send me a DM on Instagram as well. And yeah, I would love to see more people tracking their knits and talking about it here on YouTube and also over on Instagram. So if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. In general, I do weekly podcasts here on the channel where I talk about what I'm knitting, and this year I'm going to be talking a lot more about what I'm designing. Sneak peek, I haven't talked yet about what my goals are for 2025. That's going to be the next video coming out here, but that's it. That's a big one, is designing. So I hope you'll stick around and follow along with what I've got going on this year on the channel. So alright, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye! Say bye! What are you doing, Rocky? Did you wear any knits this year? No, I haven't knit you anything yet? What is wrong with me? It's because you're just a little baby boy, huh?